Fresh Baked, we've got a little bit of breaking news for you today. Web Slingers, currently under virtual queue only right now. Effective today, effective this afternoon, as a matter of fact. They're going to start testing, not full-time, but experimenting, testing standby queue. You know what? I'll read you the update that I got earlier today. Web Slingers Spider-Man Adventure may pause virtual queue enrollment from time to time for the remainder of the operating day. Later in the evening, typically between 4 and 6 p.m., a standby queue for Web Slingers will become available and will be communicated to guests via the Disneyland app. Guests arriving at the attraction with a boarding pass or a DAS return time will still receive expedited access to the attraction within their designated return window, even if it has transitioned to a standby queue. So that means, let's say you got a virtual queue earlier today, and your return time was for 8 p.m. You don't have to wait in the standby. It's like having a fast pass, and you just go right through. Now, a couple observations. Question: does Web Slingers even need a virtual queue? We're going to find out. We're going to find out today. As a matter of fact, I'll be in the park later today with baby Sophia, and we'll look into this. I'm going to start looking at that standby queue immediately. But the question is, does it need standby? I remember when Oogie Boogie started, we heard the news that they were going to use a standby queue, no virtual queue. I said, this is going to be a very nice test to see how the attraction reacts to standby. And I'm guessing that the results favored that. We'll see. It's a limited crowd, Oogie Boogie was, so you didn't have a full complement of guests. But the standby wait times were 30, 45 minutes for Web Slingers, depending on when you got to the attraction. So the question is, does Web Slingers need it? If you look at what's happening at Rise of the Resistance, I don't know. It's hard to say. Rise of the Resistance has actually had some mixed results. Initially there was a big push when it went standby. They're testing standby right now at Rise of the Resistance in Florida, I should say, just to clarify. Rise of the Resistance here in Disneyland is still virtual queue only. You know what? Let's take a look at the map. Let's take a look at the Walt Disney World app. We're gonna. I think I've already got it filtered. Do I? Yes, I got it filtered for Hollywood Studios already. Show that list. Star Tours 5 minutes. Muppet Vision 10. Man, they still got Muppet Vision. Okay, Lightning McQueen's, I don't know what that is. Twilight Zone is 40 minutes. Toy Story, wow, it is busy at Hollywood Studios. Rock and Roll, okay, here we go. Wait, Millennium Falcon is 55. There it is. Star Wars Rise of the Resistance is at 135 minutes. That's 2 hours and 15 minutes standby. So it has been operating. Rise of the Resistance standby has been operating for a couple weeks now, right? And we haven't seen a big dip. It's been pretty steady around that number. Sometimes it's in the 90 range, but it's not gotten really bad. 135 on a Friday afternoon is pretty good. I mentioned this because I want to kind of gauge. By the way, I'm totally winging this, no script today, so pardon me if I start going off on tangents. I mentioned this to say, where does Web Slingers compare to Rise of the Resistance? Certainly, the competition is. Web Slingers does not compare as an attraction to Rise of the Resistance. Rise of the Resistance is one of the greatest attractions ever built. Web Slingers it's fun. So I don't think we should have an expectation that if we go standby, it's going to be anything like the 2 hours and 15 minutes. I think an hour. So I guess what I'm saying is no, Web Slingers does not need a virtual queue. And I think that they're going to be just fine with standby. Anybody who really, really wants to wait in Web Slingers can wait 60 or 90 minutes, which I think is probably the max. I'm guessing max 90 when they do this. But we're only going to find out in the last, 5 or 6 hours of the operation. They said they're going to start between 4 and 6 p.m. Now, next question. If it's about whether or not Web Slingers needs one, what about other reasons? Namely, Genie Plus. Right now it's virtual queue only. And I don't know if it was a slam dunk that they would put Web on Genie Plus or if it would stay virtual queue. The announcement did say, the original announcement said that those attractions with virtual queue would remain in virtual queue. And we're going to get back to that again in a minute with regard to Rise. But I do feel like putting this on standby now does perhaps give more value to Genie Plus. It makes it more. Or maybe it doesn't. I don't know. If they had kept web slingers on virtual queue only, right? There's no standby. That would increase demand for people who to get Genie Plus who want to ride web slingers but couldn't because they couldn't get a virtual queue spot. Unless, I haven't checked, it's been a minute since I've checked virtual queue performance and to see how Web Slingers was doing. It's been a minute. I don't generally use virtual queue. I stopped. I get Rise of Resistance occasionally, and I hardly ever am in DCA these days, it seems like. I wonder. That's interesting. That's a thought-provoking question. Does Web Slingers have more value to Genie Plus as a virtual queue only or as standby? I've been saying for a long time that they need to make standby as unpleasant as possible to entice people to purchase Genie Plus, right? I think Disney's doing this, putting this on standby, maybe is an answer to that question. Maybe they do feel like it is more value because they wouldn't do it otherwise, right? Why would they put this on standby if they didn't think it was going to help sales of Genie Plus? Interesting question. So what about its effect on, let's say, Rise of the Resistance? I do feel like this is going to increase demand for Rise of the Resistance because in some ways you could say that if you failed to get a Rise of the Resistance virtual queue, Spider-Man or the Web Slingers was a backup, I guess. Although it's hard to get both at the same time, or try to get both at the same time. I don't know if that is still the case today, but if you fail at Rise and you launch, or you go for Web Slingers, those are usually still available a little while longer than Rise was. But this is going to put all the focus, no matter what, it's going to put all the focus in terms of virtual queue on Rise of the Resistance, which then kind of begs the question, would they do something similar for Rise of the Resistance? Considering they're already doing that now at Walt Disney World, and I would say that the result so far is favorable to those guests who wanted standby for Rise of the Resistance. The guests who wanted standby for Rise are saying, look, I think, even at 2 hours, they're saying, that's fine. That's fine. I just want that chance. In other words, if the reasoning for having virtual queue was to avoid, apocalyptic standby wait times 4 or 5 hours, well, that's a fail. It's not doing that. Rise is not achieving those kinds of numbers. And there are certainly plenty of people who just want that opportunity to wait, that 2 hours. Now, there are some people who don't want to wait 2 hours. So now this, the virtual queue was their only way to ride because Rise of Resistance, because they don't want to wait in a 2 hour line. They might wait an hour perhaps, or 90 minutes, but they're not going to wait 2 hours or 2.5. Interesting, interesting situation this. I have to think that there's some sort of hybrid, and maybe that's what they're testing. Maybe that's what they're testing is a hybrid method, because they talked about this. And this is part of the overall plan. There are a lot of people out there who follow Disney closely, who are into the analytical side of things, whom I pay attention to, people smarter than me, who will say that Disney's intent is to make, getting onto these attractions as convoluted as possible so that you take the easy route, i.e. Genie Plus and Lightning Lane. So what do we got? We got Standby, Fast Pass, Virtual Queue, then this hybrid thing. You got Lightning Lane, which I guess is the same thing as Fast Pass. You got a lot of different ways, single rider, you got a lot of different ways to get into these attractions. It's getting more and more complicated. But a hybrid would be, and they tested this at Indiana Jones for a minute, hybrid would be, virtual queue early on, then standby, or standby early on, which is what Indiana Jones did. Indiana Jones did standby for the first hour or so, if I recall, while Indiana Jones was on virtual queue. The first hour or two, it was standby. Then they went virtual, and then maybe later on in the evening, they went back to standby. I could see them doing something like that here at Web Slingers. And then eventually, Rise of the Resistance, a question mark. It's still curious. It's still curious while I pontificate on things off the cuff here. It's still curious that Disney World, Hollywood Studios, well, it's a test. They called it a test, so we don't know if it's permanent or not, but that they did that at Disney World and not at Disneyland. And I'm looking for Disney to do things like that to help. They want to create as much demand as possible, basically. That's what this is all about. So they want to create as much demand as possible for Genie Plus. And there's going to be a lot of different ways to do it, and this move is one of those. Look, I'm really curious to see how this Web Slinger goes. We're going to be there tonight. I'll be there with Sophia. We'll monitor the wait times a little bit at Avengers Campus and see how that goes. All right, postscript to this story. Fascinating. I just got updated on this, and this is really interesting. Web Slingers, Genie Plus, yes, not just Genie Plus. It's going to be one of the a la carte, one of the paid options, i.e. Rise of the Resistance, Radiator Springs, and Web Slingers. Never did I think that Web Slingers was going to be among those that you had to pay extra for on top of Genie Plus. I am I don't know how to process this. By the way, I've got an update on all of the Genie Plus attractions that are going to be Lightning Lane and the three that are going to be the a la carte. We're going to talk about that in another video, but I wanted to add this to this one in this conversation specifically. So right now, Web Slingers is going to be tested for standby, and then eventually they're probably going to, and then it's going to be Lightning Lane, paid a la carte Lightning Lane. Until next time, guys. Follow us on Instagram at _FreshBaked, on Twitter at FreshBakedDisney, that's fresh with no E, and on TikTok at FreshBakedDisney. If you like our show and would like to show your support, please consider joining our Patreon campaign at patreon.com/freshbaked. And otherwise, thanks again for watching, everybody. Stay tuned. We got a live stream coming right after this. We can talk about this some more. We got a live stream coming at 3 o'clock Pacific. Right after I publish this video, we're going to get ready for that. Stay tuned for that. Fresh Baked and stuff. I love you guys. Be safe. Be kind. Fresh Baked.